I want you to think about the last time your child completely fell apart. Maybe it was over a sock that felt wrong. Maybe they scrimped because a sound was too loud that no one else even noticed. Maybe they threw themselves on the floor in a supermarket and you thought, what is wrong with my child? Nothing is wrong with your child. But something might be different about how their brain processes the world. And that difference has a name. It has a science behind it. And today I'm going to explain it in a way that might genuinely change how you see your child forever. Hi, I'm Dr. Aditi, a Pediatric Neurologist. And on this channel, Neurology, I try to take the science of your child's brain and make it actually usable for you as a parent. Today, we're talking about sensory processing. This is one of those topics that gets spoken about a lot but rarely explained properly. So by the end of this video, you're going to understand what sensory processing actually is, what happens when it goes wrong, how to recognize the patterns in your own child, and what steps you can take right now. Let's get into it. What is sensory processing? Your child's nervous system is doing something extraordinary right now, in this very moment. It's receiving information from the outside world, sound, light, taste, smell, and simultaneously receiving information from inside of the body, from the joints, the muscles, the skin. And it's integrating all of that, making sense of it and deciding what to do. The entire process is called sensory processing. Think of it like your brain has a constant inbox, and all day long the world is sending messages, sounds, textures, smells, movements, and your brain has to sort through all of it, decide what matters, and respond appropriately. For most of us, this happens automatically. We don't think about it. But for some children, that inbox is either overflowing or barely receiving anything at all. And that's when we start to see the behavior what worries parents. Now here's something I want you to really take on board. Sensory processing is not the same as behavior. It's what underneath the behavior. The behavior, the meltdown, the refusal, the aggression, that's just the visible tip. The sensory system is the iceberg. Every single person has what we call a sensory threshold. And this is really the key concept of today's video. Your threshold is essentially how much sensory input do I need before I react. Low threshold means you react quickly and intensely. A little input goes a long way. We call this hyper-responsive. These children are what we'd historically call oversensitive. But that word doesn't do them justice, because their response makes complete neurological sense. High threshold means you need a lot of input before you respond. We call this hyporesponsive. These children often seem to not notice things. They don't feel pain the same way others do. They seem a bit checked out, and they tend to seek more sensory input to feel regulated. And here's what makes this fascinating, and what I think will help you as a parent. You don't have just one threshold across all senses. You might have a low threshold for sound, every noise grates, but a high threshold for visual information. So you don't even notice a cluttered room. Your child is a unique sensory profile, not a diagnosis, a profile. So in practice, sensory processing differences tend to show up in three main patterns, and I want you to listen to these carefully because I think you're going to recognize your child or maybe yourself in at least one of them. Pattern 1 is sensory seeking. These are the children who are always on the move. They touch everything. They love rough and tumble play. They might crash into things, hang off furniture, chew on pencils. Their brain is understimulated. It needs more input, so it goes looking for it. And from the outside, this looks like hyperactivity, but it's not the same thing. Pattern 2 is sensory avoiding. These children seem withdrawn. They refuse to wear certain clothes, particular texture, tight waistbands, sock seams. They hate messy play. They avoid playgrounds. They don't like being touched unexpectedly. Their brain is getting too much input and it's protecting itself by avoiding more. Pattern 3 is sensory sensitivity. This is where the emotional response is particularly strong. A sound that barely registers for you feels physically painful to them. Getting their hair brushed feels like an assault. These children are easily overwhelmed, easily upset, and often labeled as dramatic, which is one of the most damaging things we can do to them. The really important thing I want you to understand, these patterns can overlap. A child can be sensory seeking in some situations and sensory avoiding in others. They are not mutually exclusive. Research by Parham and Malox, and this is a paper I think every parent should know about, shows that sensory processing difficulties are consistently associated with 5 areas of impact. Social skills, motor skills, both fine and gross, self-concept, play skills, and the ability to perform daily living tasks. And when I say daily living tasks, I mean things like getting dressed, eating, bathing, going to school, the most ordinary moments of your child's day. Let me walk you through the 5 sensory systems, and I want you to take a moment on 2 that most parents have never heard of because they are not in the mainstream conversation. Everyone knows sight, hearing, taste, smell. Fine. But there are 2 more that are absolutely fundamental to your child's functioning. The vestibular system. This is your inner ear. It processes movement and gravity. And when it doesn't work well, you see children who struggle to sit still, who have poor coordination, who get overwhelmed in busy environments. It also plays a massive role in emotional regulation, something most parents would never connect to movement. The proprioceptive system. This is a feedback from your muscles and joint that tells you where your body is in space. Children with proprioceptive difficulties often seem clumsy. They bump into things, they fall, they have difficulty with tasks that require them to grade their force, like handwriting or holding a cup. When you understand these 2 systems, a whole new dimensions of your child's behavior make sense. I want to talk about self-regulation because this is where it all comes together. Self-regulation in the sensory sense means the brain's ability to reach and maintain the right level of alertness for whatever the situation demands. Here is an analogy I love. You are a competent driver. You drive around your city with the radio on, kids chatting in the back. No problem. But then you are in an unfamiliar city. It's raining heavily. It's dark. What do? You turn the radio off. You ask the kids to be quiet because your brain needs to redirect its processing resources. This is self-regulation. That's normal. But for a child with sensory processing difficulties, that dial is either stuck on too high or too low. And they don't have the tools to adjust it. So they fell apart. They shut down. They act out. Not because they want to, because their nervous system doesn't know how else to cope. Now, when is this something to act on? We all have sensory preferences. I personally cannot wear anything with a rough collar. That's not a disorder, that's a preference. It becomes a concern, and it's important I'm clear about this when it interferes with everyday life. When your child's sensory responses are so intense that they can't get dressed, can't eat a varied diet, can't attend school without daily distress, can't make friends because social situations are overwhelming. If you're watching this and nodding, here's what I want you to do. First, observe and document. Start noticing patterns. When does the meltdown happen? What sensory trigger preceded it? Time of the day, environment. This information is gold. Second, validate. Don't dismiss. I know that sounds really loud for you. It's so much powerful than stop overreacting. Validation doesn't mean agreeing. It means acknowledging their experience. Third, see an occupational therapist who's trained in sensory integration. Not a general OT, specifically one trained in sensory processing. They can assess your child, build a sensory profile, and design an intervention that's personalized to your child's nervous system. And fourth, talk to the school, because here's something in the research that most parents don't know. A teacher's own sensory preferences shape their classroom environment. And if a teacher loves visual stimulation, colorful walls, lots of displays, constant background noise, and your child has a low visual and auditory threshold, that classroom is genuinely difficult for your child to learn in. This is not about blame, it's about collaboration. I leave you with this. Your child's brain is not broken. It is wired differently, and different doesn't mean less. It means we need to understand it before we can support it. The science of sensory processing exists precisely for this, to give us a framework, a language, and a path forward. Share this with your child's teacher, your pediatrician, your family. And if this helped you today, please share it with one parent who needs to hear it. That's the whole reason I make these videos. I am Dr. Aditi. This is Nurture and Neurology. I'll see you next time.